Financially Fluent with Ray Godleski of Southeast Wealth Partners. Our goal is to equip you with the knowledge and tools necessary to navigate your financial journey with greater ease and efficiency.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Financially Fluent. I'm very happy today to have Danielle Laughlin with us. Good morning. How are you doing?
Hey, Ray, I'm doing great. Hello to your great audience here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Well, before we get into a few questions that I have for us today, maybe just a little high level, tell us a little bit about your firm and kind of why you got into the business.
Great. Well, I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law right at 15 years now, and I've owned my firm for 10 of those years. I started it after working for the banks during the Great Recession, where I was working in bankruptcy and saw a lot of business owners going through bankruptcy. My dad ultimately had to put his business through bankruptcy as well during that time because he was in the construction industry. So I had always known I wanted to open my firm in law school and was part of the Be Your Own Boss Club with some other friends of mine. And I made a plan 5 years from graduation, I'd be my own boss, and I did that. And I started first doing like asset protection is what I kind of called it in my own lawyer brain. Not many people understood exactly what that was, but we did real estate, business, and estate planning. And then I kind of niched into just doing business so I could scale up once I started to learn about actually running a business rather than just being a business lawyer.
And of course, we're both Georgia State Panthers.
Yes,
so
go Panthers.
Go Panthers. And I'm a little biased, but I feel like their business school is amazing. And I feel like their law school is underrated. I feel like, I've met a lot of good attorneys from there. You agree?
Man. Yeah, you're right. I call Georgia State the best kept secret.
Yeah.
I really feel that it's an amazing school. And like I told you before we started here, my son and my daughter are going this fall. And my son will study finance at the business school. And then my daughter's doing film and media. So
nice.
Also a new industry, kind of growing industry in Georgia. So we're excited and I love Georgia State.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on. Got several questions that I want to ask. I think our audience would appreciate whether they're business owners or not. But, we're going to start off with that, which is what are the most common mistakes people make when they're forming a business entity?
Well, I see a few key mistakes that I think are proliferated in some of the talking head universe out there, I guess is what we would call it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times folks come in, they're dead set on having an LLC. That's what they've heard. They need an LLC. And a lot of times it's true, but they don't know why. It's almost just like, that's what I need because somebody said that I need that. And LLCs are very flexible, but there are certain times that you probably don't actually want an LLC, especially if you're going to do some significant capital investments and things like that. And you may not actually be earning profit for some period of time. There are some benefits to doing C Corp status that some businesses should consider. So I think the first issue is really just thinking about what is the capitalization of the company and how are you going to turn a profit? How long will that take for you? Because an LLC is a pass-through, right? So it is a partnership. It means every dollar you earn goes right to your taxable income. And you can do some elections. So another common mistake that I see is people say, well, I want to form an S Corp. And especially in Georgia, at least, some states do have S Corp as an entity at the state level, but most don't. It's just an election with the IRS. And so it's like, well, you could do a C Corp elected at S, or you could do an LLC elected at S. Once you elect S, you have limitations. And so there's just a lot more to it, I think, than most people really understand. And so they kind of make snap judgments based on what they've heard from other people.
Yeah, I always find it fascinating. There's CPAs that I've had on before, and they'll have opinions about S Corps and LLCs and C Corps when or whenever. But it does seem like an attorney or someone like your firm, if somebody really wants some hand holding and actually get set up as an LLC or an S Corp, C Corp, would your firm help them just logistically get through that?
Absolutely. We consider the formation primarily ministerial in that the actual act of going to the Secretary of State's office to sign up a company is
Right.
clerical, right?
Right.
And so anybody can do it. It's a very small fee. It doesn't take a lawyer. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to do
Right.
this,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So what our service is there is the deliberation and analysis of what type of entity. And then, of course, as you probably know, and probably most of your listeners know, you have to have a registered agent. And that is the person or entity that will always receive legal process.
Mm-hmm.
And so we tell folks, look, if you don't want your home address or you don't want your primary location, your primary business to be the place that the sheriff or the process server shows up if somebody has a problem, then we can be that for you. And so we also kind of wrap that registered agent service, into that to protect their privacy if something does happen.
Okay. That's good. And so I guess somebody with a side hustle, or some kind of consulting gig, they would probably just start out as an LLC. Is that fair, or not bother with that either?
Generally, I would agree with that. I think if you're doing consultancy, which is primarily just services, time for money, setting up an LLC, yes, at your house, absolutely. That's the cheapest and easiest way to become profitable and really start building your business. LLC is usually a great option there. Now, depending on the personal tax dynamic, you may want to do an S election because double taxation can be beneficial, right? Capital gains is less tax percentage than ordinary income. So there are some benefits to C Corp and S Corp when it comes to high net worth individuals in particular.
Yeah, especially when the corporate tax went down a few years back in the 2017 Tax and Jobs Act. So, and that's, of course, now we have a recent tax law that has made that more permanent until it's not, but
right.
at least it's not sunsetting. So from a planning perspective, that's helpful.
It is helpful.
Yeah. And if you had much success or you do a whole lot of work with other financial planners, or it's usually just kind of you're in your silo and they're in their silo?
I try to integrate, I tell my clients, like, your personal tax situation and your personal financial plan should be driving a lot of your entity decision-making choices.
Yeah.
Provided that there's no other regulatory or liability issue at hand that might impact that. And so I always say, look, I will defer to what your CPA and or your planner think for you. And then if there's any reason, for example, in an S Corp, you can only have 100 investors and they all have to be domestic, right? Well, that doesn't work for some businesses, right? And so now most of the time the CPAs understand that. Sometimes planners don't as much, but we try to find the ones that are more holistic and really do understand that, like, okay, we should be having a conversation rather than one person dictating what the client needs to do. So we try to integrate and partner and defer, honestly, on financial stuff as much as we can.
That's good. Well, let's talk a little bit about trademarks and IP. And, so one of the things that comes up is, when should a business owner consider trademarking their brand name or their logo?
Great question. Not everything is trademarkable, right? It's not, it's not really protectable per se, right? So my firm, my entity name is Hudson Legal LLC. I can't protect Hudson Legal, really. I could protect its logo, right?
Okay. All right.
But logos change over time. So a brand name protection is something that you typically are going to start with what we call a word mark. Because if you have a unique business name, you want to protect the word mark if you can. Word marks can be difficult because they cannot be merely descriptive of what you're doing. So, for example, Sage Business Counsel. Well, Business Counsel is merely descriptive of what we do.
Okay.
And Sage has protection already because there's a brand that got to Sage before we did. And so now there's like some nuances, So, for example, with our firm, we have a logo protection only and not a word mark protection.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so if we ever were to, and we did have to disclaim business counsel, right? We're not trying to protect those words because they're not protectable because they are merely descriptive. And so there are extreme nuances here with trademarking that most people don't understand. And they can be very simple, but also there are ways around them. And so that's kind of what we do with the client is strategize. Is it the brand name that you really want to protect? Is it that unique combination of words, or is it the logo? And if it's the logo, you'll have to remarket at some point if you ever rebrand your logo. Okay, so
Okay.
so the logo is something where every time Nike changes its primary brand logo, it has to seek new protection.
Okay.
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 But it doesn't get in trouble with its prior registrations because it already owns them.
Gotcha.
So like a new brand can't brand a Nike symbol because Nike owns the Nike word mark and all of the proliferation of Nike branding over time. And so branding is a strategy. And for the big brands out there, it's a very powerful and
Right.
lucrative strategy. For smaller companies, branding, I think, is becoming more and more important now because people are associating, like, for example, people come to you because they trust you. Now, you have a whole team and they're willing to accept that team, but they're coming
Right.
for you. So what we're seeing now is more kind of this personal branding, kind of attaching a person to a particular logo or brand name. And then that's what's kind of driving social media and like what we're calling kind of new media in the advertising space. So it's kind of a strategy there, which one you would want, but more and more we are recommending it. Whereas when I started my practice 10 years ago, branding was not as critical back then as it is now.
I don't know. Let's just take an example. Somebody they have a name, they have a logo, and in the state, there can only be one name like that, right? That's registered.
So state to state is going to vary a little bit. State protection is important. I won't discount state protection, but you already have protection when you first use it, what we call common law protection. So that first right in time is a defense and prosecution strategy. And within your state of common law, that's okay. Like, that's not too bad. What really we try to help clients understand is if you want to go outside of your state at any point, you got to go federal because federal will trump state, right? So, and so then if you get your federal mark, you can go use it in a state. And if somebody's already there, it's going to be a litigation maybe or some kind of, I mean, the lawyers aren't always going to agree on this, but most of the time that federal registration is really going to be the most powerful and the one that kind of trumps the rest of it. So that's kind of part of the strategy. It's harder with branding, and it's the state level. The reason that it feels like it can only be one name is because they're not sophisticated with the review and control of classifications of different things. So, for example, I got a cease and desist when I went to go register my logo, and I politely replied and said, if your clients don't understand the difference between lawyers and accountants, then that would be a big problem for you. But since they do, we don't have a problem here, right? Because you're doing accounting and I'm doing legal, and these are not the same thing. And so you do have less sophistication at the state level from a review. It's a very labor intensive review process. Because the federal registration is well maintained, well managed. There are, prosecuting attorneys for the United States that are paid, thousands of them that are paid to review these applications. And in your states, you don't have that. You just don't. You have nothing even close to that whatsoever. And so if you want the most brand protection, you'll do state and federal, and you'll do state in every state you're in. but you can lawyer some things to death is really my feeling on some of that stuff.
Well, we'll wrap this segment up before we go to the next one. But so if somebody just had a very simple name, like brand and logo, any idea like what the cost of that would be to just get it done, and how long they would expect for that to be done?
Oh, yeah. The good news about trademark services is that the cost, they really are very, there's a range, but like typically you're looking somewhere between $1,500, $2,500, up to $5,000, maybe $7,500.
Okay.
It depends on the comprehensiveness of both the research on the front end and then the full protection on the back end, whether you have the logo, the slogan, the word mark, if you want more than one class. So, it's kind of a spread there, but that's typically what you see. And then it takes right now, I think we're right at 6 to 8 months
Okay.
to have them reviewed.
All right. That's good. That's good. This is helpful.
If you're looking for advice specific to your situation, then take a look at this episode's sponsor, Southeast Wealth Partners. To learn more about their team and approach, go to southeastwealthpartners.com. Southeast Wealth Partners is a great next step to be financially fluent.
So going into our next segment, it's about, I would say, growth, partnerships, mergers. I think AI has a role in almost everything going forward.
Yeah.
This space included. So, and in our space even, it's like every time I'm on LinkedIn, I see, so-and-so, like our IVDs, Jose, we bought out another big firm, and so, but even on a small scale, right, there's commercial companies that are in the rural areas and they got private equity coming in that's gobbling up, the competitors. So, I guess one of the first questions that comes to mind is from a legal document standpoint, and somebody's forming a partnership or they're bringing in investors, what are some of those legal documents they should be getting in place?
Oh, yeah. Great question. So first and foremost, NDA. Before you talk to anybody about your business, you got to have an NDA in place. And a lot of times this is kind of an afterthought, but it's a big mistake. So I would say NDA is the first thing. The second thing is once you've come to some terms, right, you need a term sheet or an LOI. You need something that's indicating at least the general structure and understanding of the parties and what the transaction is going to look like. And most of the time that's going to be non-binding, right? Things that are binding typically, though, are the confidentiality provisions and sometimes exclusivity if that's purchased. Usually we try to counsel smaller clients on things like exclusivity and confidentiality, like you need that stuff and you should pay your lawyer to give you that stuff. That's a good investment for you on the front end, even if your transaction falls through. And then after that, you go to closing, basically after the due diligence period. And then closing, of course, is going to be dependent on the type of deal, usually.
So what would be good for the audience here is it doesn't have to be something that you guys did. It could be something you're aware of, and you don't have to give specific names, but if you wanted to, that's fine. Kind of walk us through a real example of an M&A deal, kind of timelines and what made it successful. So we want one that made it to the finish line, maybe not one that didn't make it.
Yeah. Yes, it's good. It's a good distinction to make, Ray, as you know. There is a lot of hype about M&A out there, but the sad thing is that many deals do not close. But I'll talk about a successful deal. I believe the most important thing to get your deal across the finish line is values alignment. If you are a local blue collar service provider, we do a lot in the construction industry. My dad was in it my whole life. I know it well. You are most of the time a person who has certain types of values, and it's usually focused on family, usually faith, your people, your community. A lot of folks in those industries really are kind of salt of the earth types of people. Well, private equity is not. So, so you have to first accept that the primary goal of a private equity purchaser is to be able to lean out and flip. That is the goal usually, or they're going to merge you in on a platform, or maybe you become the platform. It can, but either way, you're going to get mixed in with some other assets, usually some other leadership team members, and kind of cobbled together. And you want to be abundantly clear that the people that you're getting into business with, just like your marriage, just like your traditional business partners, are values aligned. They may still, everybody on the deal is usually profit motivated. That's why they're doing a deal. But like we talk about in our firm, you have to have purpose and profit in order to have a legacy, right? And so we've seen deals get across the line primarily when there's values alignment, because there's mutual trust. And so they tend to be able to work through the disagreements more easily to be able to come to a final closing.
Okay, that's good. And so what would be like some red flags that buyer, whether you're a buyer or a seller, we're talking about like a small business acquisition, what would be some red flags just to be aware of?
If you're a buyer, I think the red flags depends on what kind of buyer you are. If you are not PE, you're not a money buyer. Let's say you are going to acquire a smaller competitor, or even a larger competitor.
Okay.
I almost acquired a competitor. Okay. One of the big red flags I think people don't really take a lot of stock in because they're so focused on financials. Financials are obviously critical. I mean, if the math doesn't math, then there is no deal. I mean, that's just kind of a foundation point. Now, audited financials are typically the best way for you to know financially whether you have any red flags. So I'm not going to address that because that's not even really my. But outside of financials, I would say you need to be able to speak with key leadership. You want to really understand, again, what are the values? What's the culture of the target? Because once you start mixing people together to try to go towards the same goal, you need them to be able to mix together. That's the biggest red flag. I also see a lot from the buy side anyway, where especially in smaller companies, sellers will say, well, this is discretionary earnings. I don't have to pay for my employees' health insurance. Like, okay, but like you kind of do. Like, what do you mean? That's not really seller discretionary, right? Like that's part of why you have the team in place that is being bought. It's an investment into the costs of the services or the goods, So stuff like that, where a buyer who's not really a savvy buyer and maybe is a first-time buyer might get caught into those types of ideas to where it's almost like they're not really understanding the distinction between what's really discretionary. And so they start to feel like there's more pie to be had than there really is. There's also, I think, a big red flag when it comes to whether the target is willing to let you talk to their people or not, and at what point.
Yeah.
You also would be very weary if they're like, sure, you can talk to my guys whenever. Then it means like there's no discretion about the transaction. Everybody's aware of it. That makes people nervous. So there's a lot of psychology, I think, that comes into it. And then for sellers, big red flags usually are, I mean, if I'm negotiating for a buyer, I do want to earn out. If I'm negotiating for a seller, probably don't want an earn out. I mean,
on an IOU, would that work?
Yeah, I mean, they try to make it work sometimes, right?
But like clawback provision, maybe.
Clawback. Yeah, clawback. Can I give this back to you? It didn't really work out the way that we said it was going to. I mean, I even had a friend that sold a business, and this was restaurant, right? So, the restaurant industry is tough. I worked in that for like 15 years. It's a tough industry. And they sold, and they knew they weren't going to get paid more likely than not on the back tranche, right? And they did the deal anyway because the deal that they were, what they could capitalize on and cash in on was good for them. And so they kind of already knew the upside wasn't going to be there. So it's almost like, it's almost like for a seller, if you have a buyer that's willing to make it contingent on a future performance, that's good for you. Or that's good for the buyer.
Right.
But if you're the seller and thinking that you're still going to want to perform at the same level after you transition your ownership, that's very unrealistic.
Yeah.
Like, you've already kind of almost washed your hands of it. It does work sometimes. I have seen it work. For example, a law firm client services are successful with that sort of an arrangement a lot of times because the seller might stay on to like be a salesperson and kind of bring those leads in. And so they're not doing production really anymore. And so for a lot of times with those service providers, they're trying to kind of phase out into retirement, and they still want to monetize their reputation and the demand that generates. So we do see with kind of solopreneurs in the professional services spaces like yourself or myself that can transition out on an earn out in a successful way, I think.
Yeah. One of the things that always kind of surprised me with business owners, this is anecdotal, so I don't know the statistics, and I'm sure you have similar experiences, is these small businesses that don't have operating agreements, they don't have buy-sell agreements. Do you run into a lot of this, or what's been kind of your experience with those things?
Yeah. I am sad to say I have had to help too many people try to recover businesses that were literally stolen right from underneath them. I've seen a gamut. I'm going on a jury trial next week for a situation where my client's business was completely stolen from her.
Goodness.
By her ex-husband and his friend. So she thought she had what she needed. And she has evidence of her ownership. But what I see a lot of times is just a tremendous amount of trust in other people, particularly when you have silent partners or you have an operator who kind of controls the finances and stuff like that. This actually happened to my own dad. It was one of the reasons that my dad's business, at least what I understand, I was younger and I don't really know the details, but what I took from some of our conversations is that his partner was the finance guy. My dad was always the sales guy. My dad was very good at what he did. And so my dad drew the business in, closed the business and ran production essentially. And this guy was kind of back office finance stuff. And my dad didn't want to do any of that. My dad's a good old boy. He didn't care about any of that stuff. And, ultimately his business partner's wife got very ill. They became financially strained, and it seemed that there was some malfeasance, right? I'm not going to say the E word, but, it was the gist of what I understood about that. And I always wondered, like, well, Dad, why weren't you looking at the books? Why didn't you have the agreements in place where you could demand the accounting, or you could go into a system where you could at least get something out to your own independent advisor at some point? And so sometimes I see that there are agreements in place, but they're not being followed very well, or maybe they're not as detailed as they should be about the rights and responsibilities. A lot of times it's like, oh, we're 50-50 or we're 33-34 or whatever. I think that everybody has the best intentions most of the time, but they usually don't have the buy-sell agreements in place. They usually don't have trigger provisions for what happens when a person does, in fact, embezzle or, commit some kind of misconduct. And I don't see enough around conflicts of interest and self-dealing, which is kind of statutorily implicated, but folks don't really understand that stuff and they don't really police it very well. And so I will say too, if I'm just going to be honest though, Ray, and I tell my clients this, I'm like, this is just a piece of paper. It doesn't mean somebody won't try you. Like, that's it.
Right.
So I think folks need more documentation, but they also need more accountability, and they also need to be paying attention to what is going on, because once the money is gone, it's very difficult to get it back. very, very difficult.
Right. You know, over the years, there's been with some business owners, and we'll make sure they have key man insurance or key person insurance. I'm curious from your vantage point, when there is a buy-sell agreement, are you the attorney that's making sure they execute that? I mean, normally it's through life insurance. It could be done other ways. Or because I see it all the time, there may be a buy-sell, but they haven't even funded that.
There's no funding. Oh yeah, I see that too. Or I see the insurance with no buy sell too, right? Like a lot of folks, oh, well, we have key person insurance. And it's like, if you're a solo and you have key person insurance with no buy sell, you're fine. I mean, you don't even need one. But if you have partners of any kind, you definitely do. So yeah, we do funding. We do fund the buy sells. And I think that that's because I did estate work too. So insurance is a big part of estate planning and personal planning. Insurance in business, people are like, well, I have insurance. And I'm like, let me guess. Is it general liability insurance? You know?
Right.
And it's like they get that, that general policy. They feel good about that. No, you absolutely are right. You need to fund that buy sell. Otherwise, it's not worth anything unless you have independently wealthy folks and you're revaluing that business every 2 years at least, right? I mean, so that's another component, obviously, which is probably outside the scope, but you got to have a valuation mechanism as well in your buy sells that is understandable. And also, I hate to see like, we'll just pitch it over to an accountant, and then if we don't agree on the accountant, and then we'll try to fight about the accountant and all the things. Find a neutral. It doesn't have to be your existing accountant, right? Like in Georgia, we have some big state, players in the accountancy world, right? It doesn't have to be, the big 4 or 5 or whatever, but get like a decent firm that is going to do a great job. It's probably going to be expensive, but it's going to do a great job valuing that business that's completely independent, and just agree on it now. That company's not going to go under before yours does, more likely than not. Right. So, I think things like that, talking about what happens in the end, is also a good idea with the buy sell, because that's the only reason you have it. You're talking about the end.
Right. Yeah. And people don't want to think about it sometimes, but they need to. It really should in almost anything, right? I know for us, we always like, what's the vision, right? Where are we at in 3 years? I don't try to do planning 5 years, 10 years out anymore, because things change so fast, right? But 3 years out is reasonable, right? And of course, what we do in the next 12 months. But as we're kind of wrapping up a little bit here, so what would be a legal tip that you would wish every business owner should know?
My best legal tip is legal is not a cost center. It is a leverage point. And I see too many people think of lawyers as firefighters rather than fire protectors, right? So my dad was in fire protection. The sprinkler system is going to go on in here if a fire starts, because we already piped it and we've got the reservoirs ready to turn on. And that's infinitely better than waiting for the fire department to come and all of your stuff burns down in the meantime. Like, that is the best analogy I can think of. So I think it's just, trying to flip this idea that lawyers are only there for the messes. That's not how big companies think of lawyers. Big companies have thousands of lawyers. And so if you're a small business owner and you want to play in the big leagues and you're trying to grow a legacy, you need to find a lawyer you trust that can help you be more strategic. And it can be difficult, because just like in finance and just like in accounting, not everybody is strategic. Some people are more compliance focused, I guess I would say. You need a little bit of both. You need somebody who's going to match your risk tolerance and can also help you plan for the future that you actually want, and not some textbook that they think you should want or that they know how to give you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I see the same thing with financial planning. It's like, let's do a quick snapshot and see what, some areas of a financial plan are time sensitive, some not as much, right?
Exactly.
So, all right, well, very good. This has been great so far. You may or may not have heard, but almost no guest can escape this show without doing trivia questions. I'm gonna give you a couple of options to choose from at least, right? So we're gonna go with either a sports, trivia, or history or music. Pick one of those, and I got the question ready to go.
Let's see. I'm gonna say history.
History. Okay. Very good. This is it's kind of a funny one. Here we go. Which U.S. state is home to a town named Intercourse? If you want, I'll give you one more hint. It's a major Amish population.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. Pennsylvania, Ohio.
Yes. So Pennsylvania is correct. You got it right. Awesome.
I was like, you gave me the Amish, and I kind of gave it away. I don't know that I would have gone there. I might would have gone for, Nevada or something.
Right. Well, the next clue was going to be famous for Hershey's Chocolate World.
Oh, I haven't been, but I haven't actually been to Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's kind of weird, right? But yeah, I've never been there.
Yeah, it's I've been there, but I haven't been to Pittsburgh yet. I kind of want to check that out, but
oh yeah,
I've been the Philly. Yeah, I won't say any more about Philly, but yeah, thanks for playing. That was fun. And as we really start to wrap up here, where because you have a podcast, so where could listeners go if they want to learn more about kind of what you do? What's a good podcast?
Yeah. Thanks, Ray. It's a new podcast, and I would invite anybody to come listen. It's called More Than Legal. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or you can go to the website, morethanlegalpodcast.com. And we talk about the more than legal aspects of your business. So very similar to this format. We tend to focus on more the culture and purpose sort of stuff rather than the dense legal, financial, and tax materials, but we bring on experts in those areas, and I hope you're going to come be a guest of mine.
Thank you so much for that invitation. I'm looking forward to that. So, well, look, thanks again for being here. For the audience that's out there for Financially Fluent, feel free to subscribe and share it, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Financially Fluent podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
This communication is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult with a qualified tax professional, accountant, or legal advisor regarding your specific situation before making any financial decisions. Investment advisory services are provided only in compliance with applicable laws and regulations. Ray's opinions are not based on the specific financial situation of any investor, so they may be unsuitable for some investors. The information on Financially Fluent does not constitute a solicitation of the sale or purchase of securities. You should consult a professional advisor before executing a security trade or taking any other action based on information contained in this program. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth, Inc., member, FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned and/or other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.